Well, hello everyone. This is DBJ and Layth. We are together here with the Creators Conclave. We will do a little short introduction. If you're not familiar with who we are and what we do, and we will get started. So, please go ahead, take the reins, Layth, if you
God.
wish. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm Layth. I am somebody who's trying to get off the ground with YouTubing. My name's Darius John over there. Generally speaking, I'm trying to work on loads and loads of different ideas because I'm kind of I'm a weirdo who comes up with like 100 different ideas and only thinks halfway through half of them. At the moment, I'm writing up a campaign diary, which is going through my most recent campaign, which is kind of the one. It's kind of the one that I've put the most effort into. Everything else has been throw anything at the wall, see what sticks. But this one's this game that I'm running is the one that I'm being very serious about and stuff. But in all cases, I also cover things like general news and stuff like that. We'll see how it goes through. Yeah. And how about you?
Well, I am, of course, DBJ. I am Davae Breon Jaxon, part of 1/3 of Critical Hit Publishing, and my brainchild is the cinematic environs, and it's basically a third pillarist products for mainly 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, but I'm a old grognard role player, and kind of got pulled into the online community by some other role players when I decided to dip my hand back into it, and then I haven't looked back. So yeah, of course I produce videos. I've got maybe 250, 260 videos out there. I'm on a number of Facebook groups on and off, Absolute Tabletop, Critical Hit Publishing Facebook group, the RPG Brigade, of course, Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition group, which is huge, hundreds of thousands of members.
Mm-hmm.
And that's about it as far as I can remember.
Well, so,
yeah, it's a rather odd thing being part of online communities, whether it's YouTube and being part of Facebook groups and producing materials, because without the physical presence of people, it's very difficult for me to realize how much other people are familiar with myself, right? Whether my face or what I do or how I do it. And so it's a little bit of an odd growing, I don't want to call it popularity because that's really it's so awareness.
Yeah.
I would
visibility.
say
Visibility is a good word for it.
Yeah. And which is part of a not subtle but not so subtle segue into kind of what we're going to talk about today. So I thought I'd bring up something extremely popular, especially with our first world societies that we live in. I'm in the States. You're across the pond.
Oh yeah, you guys love it more than me, more than we do. Let me tell you.
Oh hell yes! And it's the royal wedding. And of course we are absolutely devoted to RPG subjects and topics and things like that. So I thought of many ideas of how the royal wedding could be incorporated into, or the idea of the royal wedding could be incorporated into RPG ideas and stuff. So yeah, I thought I'd do that.
Okay. This sounds like a good idea to put through. So, but before anything, I'm just wondering, actually, like, this is the royal wedding. Is that to mean that, like, what about the rest of the royal families? There are like 70 of them still. Like, poor Marianus of Luxembourg. I mean, come on, dude. Be nice to him.
Well, just as there are like different royal titles, they haven't acquired the word "the" in front of them. So you have
Okay,
this
fair
is
enough.
the royal wedding. They have royal weddings. This is the royal wedding. So they, maybe there's something that they've skipped over. Other than dukes and barons and knights and things. It's like, well, you have to get the, but in all honesty, here in the States, like we don't have any. There's no historical royal personages that we can turn to as a legacy. Most of it is more populist kind of things, like who's popular as a singer or writer or actor, or a few historical figures. There's some rich families, but nothing on that level. And we tend to raise up and then toss away a lot of those individuals as well. And so you can get I'll make an example, like politically we have like the Kennedys, right? And they raised up on a big platform, and then nowadays you shrug, and they're Kennedys.
Yeah, the Kennedys still exist, but they're not
right.
I don't hear about them on the news.
Exactly. And sometimes if there's a way for them to make waves, then people will go, oh, I remember them. And there's this kind of like false attraction to something that they hadn't thought about in a while. So for example, here, as far as 6 months ago, were we really interested in the royal family, what was going on and wedding? Not really. Then you advance 6 months, and now people are going like, oh, it's something I've been interested in my whole life. And I'm going, no, you weren't. No, don't stop. Now, admittedly, there are people who are extremely passionate about a lot of different things. So there are people who have their homes completely decked out in like, British fanfare here in the States. So there are those individuals.
Wow.
Yeah,
that actually really surprises me, because like over here, with the exception of a couple of places that I was working at, like there was nothing. Everyone was like, "Oh, let's just go shopping."
it's funny because it's the I guess it's similar to the grass is greener mantra. Like when you're not in it, the people that aren't in it think the people in it are doing certain things. So like here it's it's flags, it's like British flags and everything, keep calm and then add your own meme kind of thing to it here. And I'm sure there's a lot of it is kind of a shrug worthy, like, okay, I get it, but it's
actually it kicked up quite a bit of well, I'm not going to say it was a massive big problem, but it certainly was something of grand contention that we have. Some just a bit of background on royal families and how that stuff seems to be for us. Generally speaking, the British people have the opinion of, we want to keep the royal family around, but we don't actually want to put any effort into keeping them alive. And as a result, we have this kind of thing of, oh, you're going to have a royal wedding. Okay, that's 40 million pounds, just that we're probably not going to see back. But then immediately people are going to be like, oh, no, a lot of their stuff is that they're independently wealthy and they bring lots of tourism. And, if like they're one of the main, it was actually really interesting. There was like this recent study that was like, Chinese people, which are like the biggest growing tourist market in all the world, they come to England for 3 reasons. They come for pasties, because over here for some reason they love pasties. They come for the education, because we have a really good deal of cultural exchange with them, and they come because they want to see Buckingham Palace change the guard. Like that is the specific thing that they come to see. and then for some reason they just stay for ages. So power to them, I suppose. I mean, not really, but
Exactly. Well,
yep.
Well, of course we are into role playing games and a role playing game community. So I thought I'd toss out a couple of things related to or how you can incorporate a royal wedding into any RPG setting, and how you can turn them into it's some creative flavor for some games.
Yeah.
So the first basics I thought of with royal weddings is that it's a great opportunity to use those unused social skills, right? So if you have a game with and I'm going to go like social, mental, and then physical skills, but those social skills, social attributes, especially like in 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, your rogues and bards and such, paladins are really shine during wedding festivities, relating to people, talking to people, great opportunity to mix and match adversaries in the same region without violence instantly breaking out. Great way for game masters to say, hey, you've got 6 enemy countries all coming together and their representatives in one location, and oh, by the way, there's 10 times as many guards and guardians around, so you really don't want to get into a physical confrontation, right? Every single personage has their own bodyguards and spies and entourages and such. And if you want to go real fantastical with it, you could have like one region has their paladins and their I don't know, a storm giant bodyguard with them, and then another region has their illithid envoy with beholder bodyguards or something. And then another
I was thinking like, oh, let's just make it really, really nondescriptive. It's like, okay, this is a state meeting, so you got 6 countries from all over the place, but now you've got an illithid coming around being like, is there anyone to eat? And a storm giant being like, going, if you come near me, I will just break you.
Exactly. I mean, you could go, but and my point in going gonzo with it is you could really go pretty gonzo if you really wanted to, and have these awkward, bizarre interactions with people. But okay, let's bring it back a little bit to reality where
no, let's keep going, because actually that comes into what I was going to say about it, because like, even though it's a wedding and stuff, and it's supposed to be a big celebration, it's actually more of a like the pageantry of it and everything is more of a state function. So when you've got these kind of international this international stage of people sending delegates and things like that, it is really this big point where ambassadors get to communicate with each other, and they want to be able to negotiate in great ways. So one way that you could do as a kind of like using the social side of things is, because you've got these delegates in the same place, you have to negotiate. But part of international negotiation it has all the really weird venture capitalist stuff of wearing power suits and things like that, and you could really go nuts with that in the form of, I walk around with a cloaker skin cloak. Oh yeah, by the way, it's a cloaker. It's not dead.
right, exactly. And what a great way to let me back up a little bit. One of the fears of being a DM or a GM is like introducing your big bad to the players without them instantly getting hacked and killed right on the spot, right? So imagine, you have your delegation, I guess a cloaked Medusa or something with her ogre who's got a displacer beast as a pet or something, and they're walking around in the city openly. And so now you have this thing where the players know that these evil personages cannot instantly engage in violence, but they're evil. You know they're up to something. They're whether it's having a rare meeting with maybe another enemy ally that's or whether it's they're concocting plans, and you can have all kinds of things, assassinations, either preventing assassinations, players are hired to assassinate someone, stealing information, planting evidence, kidnappings, eavesdropping, all kinds of weird situations that are like non-combat, but can really build character interactions. But we don't, along with all the social things, so the persuasions, the intimidations, the investigations, the performances that players can do. You can have, for example, let's say you have a royal dance. Okay. So the royal dance is some form of like ritualized dance where all the men stand on one side, the ladies stand on the other. They play music, they come together, they swirl around, separate partners, come back together again. What a great way to pair off some of the player characters with some of the adversaries. And they don't necessarily have to be evil, but your paladin now starts to spin around with the old hag or something, and they're dancing. And they're coming into contact with each other hand to hand and going into this dance where they, okay, make your performance check roll, you're dancing, whatever. And you don't want to embarrass the royal family or the other player characters or your mentor or whoever it is.
But
at the same time, you're having this chance to have a one-on-one interaction with someone who may be your complete enemy. And have a few words pass by. Maybe the hag whispers in the paladin's ear, like, "Oh, you're in town. That's funny. I've seen your younger sister. I hear she's about to join the Knights Academy or something like that. But I might have other plans for her or whatever." And the paladin's just like ready to like hack her head off right then and there. And then, "Oh, sorry, got to separate into
gotta go dancing. Oh."
Oh well, and the old hag like just smiles and goes away, and the paladin is just sitting there like just red with rage, like I could kill this woman right now. But it's, that would just be really fun. And mind you, I really didn't think about what could happen, but I'm thinking like warlocks. Maybe their patron shows up, or a powerful agent of their patron. Or
because it would be something that would bring loads of different people in,
right.
And really that would be more of like in that situation, where it's kind of you've got to make this very tense piece about the land. It's more of an opportunity to kind of either foreshadow or kind of exhibit all the different things that you've got going on. So like generally speaking, at least from my experience, most D&D games, most fantasy type games, come into this kind of thing of like, oh, you start out in this really small town and then you move on to the bigger city. Well, just because you've got this big wedding coming on, you could bring some of those NPCs back, as well as showcase what may be on the horizon. What about these other countries that are bopping around? And it kind of is this kind of way of bringing cohesion to it. But let's bring in like the stuff of like what happens when the tension breaks. Like one of the big tropes of like big state events in literature is, everything's lovely and people are flying and like all the children are healing and blah, 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 blah. And then suddenly like the world goes to hell in a handbasket and like it's this really, it would be this kind of thing of the great contravention of peace. I think in TV tropes, it's like it's called like the breaking of the vow or something like that. It's just this idea of there's this lovely event that everything was so peaceful, and in the particularly dark games or the stories, it's the moment of happiness that you get, and then it's suddenly sullied by this big bad thing that would go. So thinking about this hag that really isn't getting along with the paladin, how would you do that? How would you like break the tension without it immediately turning into, okay, the knives come out and everyone start killing each other?
I believe wholeheartedly in the triangle. And it's basically just this very simple method of 3 objectives or 3 points of attention. So if you have a paladin that's a player character and a hag, I would insert a 3rd element that both balances out and draws away the paladin and the hag. So for example, in that example, the paladin hates the hag is basically temporarily prevented from just like slaying the hag right in the public, whatever. And the hag, of course, does not like the paladin. But then you have a 3rd element. Let's say that in this royal wedding, it's a neutral ground, and both want to establish like a beachhead in this location. So now they both need to get the attention of this neutral country, right? The paladin wants his order to be in this country, and the hag wants her minions or her machinations to happen in this country. So now they both have an objective, meaning the rule is you're not allowed to have physical violence. It's a wedding, and you have to appeal to this neutral party. And in that way, you have the chance of, there we go. In that way, you have the chance of limiting the 0 to 60 mentality. 0 meaning, hey, we're just having a normal conversation, to 60 pulling blades and casting spells and things of that nature. You have another objective, right? So and you can do that with physical actions. You can do that with social actions as well in the game. I would just insert another party, another objective, another adversary into the situation, even if it's another evil personage. Like, for example, let's say there's a cloaked, shrouded Medusa or something, and the shrouded Medusa does not like the hag and is willing to work on behalf of the paladin to see that the hag doesn't get any allies. Does the paladin agree to even meet with the Medusa, who's like, who notices, like, listen, you don't like her and I don't like her. Let our forces work together. And he's just going like, what do you mean? And she's like, well, I have well-trained orc assassins or something like that. Allow them to join your party, and we can work together to uncover what her plans are. And the paladin's going like, I don't want some orc assassin looking over my shoulder while I'm trying to figure out what the hag's doing. But if I refuse the Medusas, is she going to like go to the other side maybe and get another ally? So you could have you could have a lot of fun playing the building tension. And the player characters know the tension is building. So for like you were saying about introducing if you're a world builder, you have a huge, gigantic world and your players don't get to see it. But if you can incorporate some of those emissaries into this setting where there's this wedding and they're walking around, the player characters can see what is building on the horizon. And although they may choose not to engage in it, the game master or dungeon master has already laid the groundwork. Like, hey, this desert community of jinn and Ifrit, hey, they showed up. They said a couple of words. They leave. Not a player characters are thinking, there's jinn and Ifrit somewhere. Like, whoa, where did they come from? What did they want? And they left a a magical bottle with the royal family or something as a gift. It just happens to be stained a little bit. Someone should actually like buff
Give
that
it a
out.
wash.
Right.
Like I just remember like I know that this is kind of very much past a lot of people's time, but like there is the third Disney Aladdin film is about the big wedding of the two main characters, Aladdin and Jasmine, and I shit you not, one of the wedding gifts is an oracle, which is said to know everything in all of reality and can answer any question that you want. And I'm thinking like, well, that's a really good bit of role-playing thing, but actually what I was thinking about was, who the hell has that to hand? And it's like, oh yeah, let's just give it as a gift. It's a wedding gift. Let's just give it out. Yeah, whatever. Like they had political machinations. I'll tell you that they had something going on there.
Now, just to hit on the physical part, you could have a wedding. You could have it lead. It's in a week's time, and you could have all kinds of celebrations leading up to it, and so you can have some fun with the parties and competitions and just imagine like maybe Olympic Games or something of that nature. So you could have like the barbarian has to wrestle the owlbear or something in the town square, or the player's fighter has to arm wrestle with the ogre or something, or
that certainly like feeds it well into like world building concepts, because like even though this is a state event, it still gives people the ability to contextualize their characters in the world, because yet again it's the meeting of loads of people. You could literally just kind of go in and go like, oh yeah, you're like the strongest warrior in this city state. This is somebody else who's from far off end of nowhere, and they have come in, and it's literally it's kind of like a prize fight. It'll be like a boxing thing. I'm like, okay, let's just see who fights and who's thing, and then it's kind of rolling out and stuff like that. I mean, that stuff that I've done in games before, not on wedding levels, but certainly on kind of like great meetings, treaties and stuff like that. The one that I particularly remember as being like a very, very powerful, very interesting way of going about it was actually one of my players happened to be, the very stereotypical dwarf that drinks everything and fights all the time and stuff like that. And during this like treaty time, he decided to try and like make his grand move by bringing by buying and bringing the finest cask of dwarven ale he could find and bringing it to give as a diplomatic gift. And in order to just like play with people and have a good bit of fun, I just said, yeah, so one dwarf on the other side thought the same thing. So they promptly had a dwarf off where they had to figure out who was the better dwarf. And I mean, that turned into like a physical altercation in the end. We could go figure. Like the player character won, and I was just kind of like, yeah, a dwarf will not win, will not stand to have their honor impugned, or whatever the hell you want to go with that. It's all just good bits of fun. But certainly it's kind of a very like, I mean, it's kind of the case with everything, but ideas for use of state weddings, state events, really does kind of bring the wider world of the game into context. So, for instance, if we're going to be talking about my world, the world that I use in my campaign diaries and stuff, international politics as a concept doesn't really exist. Everything is quite local. As a result, when somebody is getting married and it's a big wig event and stuff like that, people in the local area might be interested in coming in. But if you hear about somebody from another country coming in, not only is it a big deal, but it's almost exclusively a sign for worry. Because Why would they be interested? What would they want? We're always a bit fractious with these kind of things. So, you can also show through, like, well, you were talking about storm giants and Goliaths and Illithids maybe showing up. Well, if it is high fantasy, sure, go ahead. But then, if it's very low fantasy, the existence of these creatures that most humans would never come across is, it will be a big deal. It will be world changing, and honestly, it will be game changing, really, for the players to come across, like, oh yeah, storm giants, these creatures that you weren't even sure existed. Yeah, they come around every now and then. They just walk around the streets. It kind of puts a lot of flavor into the game. You've got to put a lot of flavor into your story.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And you could even it kind of introduced what your outsiders consider valuable, or what they're for example, when it comes to, like, say, gifts or something, one community may bring loads of gold, where another community may bring slaves or something of that nature. And you could really, you could be a little heavy-handed with it, but you could establish, like, oh, these people find this thing valuable, or when it comes to the physical contest, you could say, well, one community is based around it's all physical strength. They're big and muscular, and that's what they value amongst their warriors. Where another community, maybe they're smaller and more quick, lithe, more acrobatic, or agile, and so they value finesse over brute strength or something. And you could have, maybe, I don't know, there's a giant stone that has never been, or very rarely moved in a field or something. It's a couple of tons, and everyone has to take their turns moving the stone. And maybe one community brings, a big giant, and the giant rolls the stone, but another community brings a scholar who uses his mind and uses a spell or something to lift the stone into the air, and then then in that way the player characters kind of get like you were saying, the concept, the context of who they are interacting with, and how they deal with their problems. And maybe the player characters are thinking, ooh, we might not want to sneak in this person's bedchamber because they are, a master wizard, or a mentalist, or psionicist, or something like that, or what have you. And also you could have missions, like I was saying about, like, being a spy, or sneaking around, or assassinations. And you could even have a thing where there's a royal gift, and the player characters must recover a platinum ring from the crypt of some ancient king, or a small Pegasus to be given as a dowry in the wedding, and eventually that Pegasus will be trained as a flying mount for the royal princess or something. You could have fun with that as well. Maybe bringing back an ancient text, or an individual does not want to come to the wedding, but the mission is to convince them and bring them back whether they want to come or not. Maybe there's a family member was exiled, or was accused of a crime or something, but they want this individual back for this special day, and they don't want to be found. So now the player characters have to find this person, and you could have this stretch well beyond the boundaries of the region. So maybe they have to go for a 6-month mission to be back by a specific time for the wedding with this prisoner, or ancient tome, or something like that, a mask or a cloak that's been, that's supposed to be give the family good luck. But I'd like to segue over into another special occasion in our community, which is a Kickstarter by one of our very own. And and I wanted to talk about Kickstarters in general and
Okay.
the idea of them being looked at as combination business and special event,
Mm-hmm.
if you will, a marriage of the two. um, so, and I wanted to bring. Let me be more specific. I want to talk about Lloyd Collins, the Jarl DM.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, everyone who watches this, please check him out and check out Iskloft as the successfully backed Kickstarter that is still going on. Right now, I just called up the page, and it's 14 days left, and I'm one of the few people that got to play with Lloyd Collins when he first got into role playing games.
Really?
Yes,
Oh,
very
I'm
much.
actually really surprised by that.
Yeah, yeah,
I,
yeah.
I thought he's been playing for like decades or something like that.
No, not at
When did he
all.
start?
3 years ago, maybe.
Jesus.
Well, let's give some context here. He has enough role playing experience for like decades.
Okay.
He is a gaming he's a gaming machine. There isn't a moment when he's not gaming. He's talking about gaming. He's doing hangouts. He's always posting up his smoke thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
He has an interesting if I could be so bold as to doesn't give two fucks kind of a attitude, and
Yeah,
it works for him.
I can appreciate that. Yeah.
And that has a lot to do with Kickstarters in general. So, excuse me. So, for example, on his Kickstarter, he asked for a goal of like $1,700. I believe it was $1,768. I don't know why he didn't round that off, but that's probably exactly what he needed to produce the.
Yeah, the reason for that is interesting thing that not many creators on Kickstarter know about, but pretty much everybody think. Kickstarter instituted a thing where they automatically change like the goal to the regional equivalent of the person viewing. As a result, Oath of the Frozen King and all these things, where they were like saying in all of their videos and stuff, oh, we just need like $6,000 or whatever. And it was in the little bit in the corner. It was like, oh yeah, we need like, like £500 because that's how much dollars are worth now. Sorry, dude.
Yeah, I can't apologize for that. Dollars in a toilet and it'll stay there.
No. Before we continue, though, I actually quickly want to talk of the chat because we happen to have some people coming into view, and welcome, lovely people. We have Jared Premont, who gets to see my elbow while I scratch it. And it's more talking about what we were discussing with in relation to like how Americans are obsessed with weddings and such, and Mr. Premont believes that it's because you are jealous as a result of you not being like welcomed into the Commonwealth Games. Do you have any opinions on this, Mr. Jaxon? Speaking as you are, because you are in fact the speaker for all America now.
Yes, well, as the ultimate representative, I will say that the jealousy is absolutely true.
Okay.
It is a there is a built-in arrogance of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's the person who wins the lottery and gets rich living in the community of people who have legacy wealth.
Oh, okay.
Right. So if you look, because the United States is a very new country, and I think part of that kind of like reflects in the attitudes and stuff. Like, yeah, we've got money, we've got power and such, but we don't have that one thing, and we want it. So, how can we acquire it for ourselves, and this was a perfect opportunity for us to glom on to something that doesn't belong to us, but we act like we own it anyway.
Now this is actually appreciated because Jared recognizes this by saying that you will be scared away by Men at Work and their grand seminal song Down Under. But also I also want to give a little shout out to Mr. Prupra or Prupru. I don't know how to pronounce your name, dude.
I'm pronouncing it Prupru.
Prupru? Okay. Well, in that case, we provide you entertainment as you have lunch, and have a good lunch, dude. I hope you have a better lunch than I do. I'm going to be having like reconstituted beef or something. Like that.
I need to tell Prupru that I really appreciate the feedback that he or she posts in my videos and such. I don't get to respond all the time, but super thoughtful. Oh my, I cannot explain the gratitude I have for so many people that are very thoughtful in their expressions when they comment on some of my videos. I have not had nearly the negative experience so many people have had being YouTube content creators, and I absolutely love it. So thank you. Thank you so much. And it has nothing to do with whether someone agrees or disagrees with me. I could care less about the disagreement, because the disagreement allows me to think more about what it was I said in my position. But to disagree and say, hey, here's why I disagree, and to have the thoughtfulness to explain it. I love that. So keep it up.
Right.
Keep me on my toes. Hell yeah.
Good go. But bringing back to, as I rudely interrupted you while you were midstream talking about Kickstarter, what kind of thing interests you about the Kickstarter side of it? I mean, we've got Iskloft and Lloyd Collins with his stuff, but we've also come across a lot of different things. There's been a big glut of various and sundry things, people getting kickstarted, people doing startups of like plastic miniatures board gaming and stuff like that. I mean, the big one for that was the Dark Souls game, which they like asked for, we want like I think it was something like we want £50,000, and they got like 7 million and stuff. So they made a lot of money was made off that. And you got other sides to it. We're getting this big influx of people who, because they are just able to immediately start up, are doing so. Are there any people like that who you've got an interest in, who you're looking at? Because you are, as we all know, the grand spokesman for both America and the RPG community as a whole. So please, Mr. Jaxon, tell us what's next.
Well, I think there was a comment, I hope I don't misquote it, but I will transfer it to what we're talking about. The web DM guys were having a live chat, and one of them, they have something like, I don't know, 150,000, maybe 250,000 subscribers on their YouTube channel, and they've got Patreon going and things like that. And they made a comment amongst themselves that we've been able to monetize their friendship. And Kickstarters and Patreons are just they are the monetary result of attention. So we're social. If you were to take the word social media and transfer the S into the American dollar sign, essentially that's what Kickstarter and Patreon has become. And it's not a bad thing. Okay. I know there's some people who are diehard avid fans of Kickstarters, and then there are those who are like completely opposed to Kickstarters. I'm not paying somebody for something that doesn't exist, right?
Yeah.
But in many ways, what I find happens in Kickstarter is that initially Kickstarter was for like music and for bands, for artists. Please help me create this piece of art and give me a few dollars and I can create this piece of art. And in many ways, role-playing games are artistic.
Yeah.
It's a form of imagination, form of creation. And in order to get these Kickstarters done, a lot of them need a lot of money. But it's not really the physical act of getting this product all the time. Another part of it is what you're doing is you're investing in the you're investing in an individual or company that brings you a feeling, whether it's a feeling of community, whether it's a feeling of being an outsider,
Yeah.
or for example, some people will kickstart someone's project because they've been fired from 3 different companies and they really want to get this idea off the ground. They
Yeah.
are a great writer, a great creator, and no role-playing company will hire them. And they're saying, hey, listen, I've got a backlog of great ideas. Could you please help me get my idea off the ground? And they're going, whoa, this person worked in a role-playing community for 35 years. Hell yeah, I'll back them up. I want to see what this is. There's also the idea of being part of a community in the sense that, for example, Matt Koval has kickstarted Strongholds and Followers. I think it's called. And I backed it. I think I'm going to get like 2 books or something. I'll probably give one of them away. But anyway,
give it away to me.
Yeah. I'm sure it's going to be hideously expensive to ship it unless he can figure out a way to get it printed and bound overseas. But anyway, okay. So he asked for maybe in the tens of thousands, and he got well over like $1 million or $1.5 million to produce this book.
Yeah.
And part of it is, do people want to be left out of the air quotes community, right? Do I want to be the person who didn't back this thing when all these other people that, I know and respect are doing it? And will that leave me left out? And so I think a part of that is being part of the community. Another part is investing in honesty. I believe like Lloyd is a perfect example of how this leans over. If you take a look at the absolute tabletop guys, especially tabletop terrors, Tim and James, Kearney, they are hideously honest. He pretty much lets you know what's going on in a very positive manner, what's going on behind the scenes. He'll say we've had problems with this. He used to do what was his daily damage one where he used to go for a walk and and see like homeless people and almost get hit by cars while he's talking to members, while he's doing a Facebook live chat, just walking around during his office breaks and stuff. And I think people want to invest in the openness of creativity, for good or bad. Someone could say, hey, listen, guys, I had this idea and I'm really stuck. I'm going through mental difficulties. Right. I'm going through physical difficulties. I could, I really need your help. And some people will say, man, I've gone through the same thing. So,
and you can relate to that, and it becomes this kind of thing of a feedback loop of you empower them and they bring something back in return, and it kind of makes this system, of making it all kind of like because you have empowered this person to do something with your money, with their creativity, you could maybe do it in return, something like that. Yeah, that's
right.
That's a pretty cool idea.
Yeah, and money is the side effect of it. It's the result of other things going on. And so, although I know there are people who find Kickstarters to have a negative connotation, especially when it comes to larger companies. Some people are, take the role that like, why would I back a Kickstarter for a company that already makes money?
Yeah,
like they're asking me to pay for something so that they don't so they don't have to make an investment of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
But business wise, I understand why a company would do that, right? If what's a big game like a game designers workshop or a Cobalt Press or Monty Cook Games wants to put a book out, they don't want to lose money. They want to know, hey, I've got this idea to do a setting based on dreams or something. Is there anyone interested in it? They make a Kickstarter, and then when people pledge their money, they know if people
If
are
it'll work out.
right.
Yeah.
And when
It
people
also. Oh, sorry, dude.
No. I was just going to end with when people backing Kickstarters prove or disprove whether someone is or is not interested in an idea.
Mm-hmm.
And you can measure your financial success based on that, and you know which direction to go. Real time.
No, that's a pretty that's a very succinct way of what I was about to say over the span of about 10 minutes. Because like that is very much the case. And I mean, while I do understand why some people would have a bit of problems with kickstarting, especially when we're talking video games, because video games is a much longer term investment than role-playing games where, like, I mean, I know one guy, Dan Hess. He has a turnaround of creating role-playing adventure. He makes adventure modules, and he kind of just goes, okay, I want everything. I will give you 27 or so things, everything that I've written over the span of the last month for $6. And he does this every month. And that's a pretty good system. Like, it's a very quick turnaround. He sets the stretch goal at like $30 or something like that, and he doesn't sell any other way. This is specifically kind of like his method of selling. And then I think he puts it on Drive-Thru RPG, but then it's kind of like, I'll pay what you want. And it's one way of doing that. But there is something to be said about the autonomy that you can achieve from it. Let me, like from Kickstarter. Now, let me see if I've got it here. Yeah, here it is. Ah! Oh, shit. I'm about to like pull my desk off the wall now. Okay, up there, believe me, I've got it, is the Blue Rose book. And it was by a company called Green Ronin. Now, Green Ronin is been around for decades. They came in on the 3rd edition boom, and they've been there ever since. Blue Rose is their game system that's kind of their most kind of fractious. People like straight up say, we like Green Ronin, but we hate the idea that they are making Blue Rose, because at the time it was doing something which was not really talked about at all. It kind of was, but it was very underground. The Blue Rose was the first one that made mainstream success of talking about kind of what was like they talk about being gay, talking about being LGBT rights, being a BAME, all of these different expressions. And one of the ones that really kind of appealed to a lot of people was just the way that they would describe things and how they would put things down as how would this culture, which is magical, respond to the XYZ, respond to a monarch who is a lesbian. And it was kind of like this thing of like, well, in this world, it's not it's fully accepted, so there's no problem. And at the time, they kind of said that we had to make some concessions because they were working in the D20 system, they were working in the 3rd edition system, and they had to make some concessions in relation to it because they had this push and pull. They had to make something that was commercial, that was viable for them. With Kickstarter, though, they kind of said, well, we're going to release it this way. We want to make it not according to any game system. Like they used their own like proprietary AGE game system, but they said we want to do it according to kind of our ethos. our system of being wholly within the romantic fantasy system, wholly within this, wholly within that. And because they were able to kind of supply something that was completely divorced from having to, cater to somebody, having to make something that's commercially viable. I think that Kickstarter really does create that. It creates something that would not survive in like free capitalist systems, but it would survive if you just say like, okay, I can sell to 70 people. If 70 people can put forward like $20 each, that's $1,400. That's enough for me to make this thing for these 70 people. And maybe somebody will come along later and want to buy it. Yeah, sure. But I made it for these 70 people.
Exactly. And that, that in many ways, that's the best and the worst of Kickstarter or direct sales marketing. Because on one hand, there's no oversight. What's the game? Fatal. I mean, if you're a fan of some of the deeper,
we only lasted one bloody episode before we started mentioning the dregs of all role playing. My God,
right. Exactly. But hey, if you want to go down into deep, dark, trenches of role playing, and you want to support that, you absolutely can, and they can market to you. But it also, like you said, frees the reins of a creator to say, I want to make this weird gonzo ephemeral game that takes place in the realms of the emotions or something. And if you're into that, and like you said, if they can find 70 people, okay, they're into it. Maybe others will be into it as well. I suppose the downside is there's no oversight when it comes to marketing the material. And what I mean by that is you may get a creator who is so creative that it's not possible to sell it to anyone else, right? It might be so niche that someone goes, they wrote this in Aramaic. I don't know how to speak Aramaic. It can't get this.
Man, I would learn Aramaic just to read it, just to be the one dude who's read the role-playing book that was written in Aramaic.
You know what I mean? Like you could really go bizarre with some of these things, and it's like, nah. I think maybe you should have gone with a marketing person and try to make this a little broader. My cats are fighting. To bring this back to specifically to Lloyd Collins and his Iskloft Kickstarter, I think one of the things is that also when it comes to a Kickstarter, that people are also supporting what maybe not necessarily what the individual is doing, but what they will do or what they have done. Right. So Lloyd's attitude and personality is he's not a very verbose kind of person, kind of laid back. He unapologetically vapes on camera at all times. He is a avid modern day Viking kind of individual, and some people go, hey, you know what, I'm not really into that. but hell, the dude doesn't apologize for it, so yeah, I'm going to support this guy because he's not putting on airs. He's not the
dude is the dude. It's kind of like, it's a way of like Kickstarter is certainly a way of putting faith in this person. I mean, I don't know particularly what his experience is in role-playing game in relation to the commercial side of it, but as far as I understand it, Iskloft is going to be his first book, and the strength of his the strength of his existence, his character to a certain degree, is the reason why it's being kickstarted to a certain degree, is the reason why word of mouth is spreading. And to a certain degree, what's his name? Matt Colville.
Yeah.
Almost entirely, it was because people liked his running the game and the campaign diary and like those 1 or 2 like 60 trillion hour live streams. You know, like you can email that out into space and like, yeah. Like those live streams that he did just got people interested. And it wasn't because he was the writer of Evolve or he has been in the gaming industry for years and years. It was the strength of those bits of him talking that got his Kickstarter off the ground and got it. It's now like the most funded role-playing game ever or something like that.
Yeah. It's so I will say that I am a fan of Kickstarters in the sense that I find it's a great platform for people to basically bring their ideas to life. And one, I wanted to bring up the value of attention. The value of a pair of eyes. And Kickstarter and Patreon is the end result, the actual monetary value of getting attention, but social media has a lot to do with that. And like, for example, myself, Lloyd, I was one of the few people when Lloyd got started in role-playing games. I was one of the few people that began playing with him maybe 3 years ago, no more than 4. And he's a monster. But as it stands now,
out of context, that sounds so awful, dude.
Yeah, dude.
I've been playing with him for 3 years, and he's a monster.
Yeah, I know. But you know, in many ways, like when his development of Iskloft, he was unapologetic. Like, yeah, I play 5th edition, and you know, this rule just sucks for what I'm trying to do. I'm going to change this.
I'm going to change it. Like, recently, he did that video on like despair or something, and I've heard, you know, there were some people who were kind of like, "No, this is like, oh, play a different game system or something like that." It's like, no, he wants to play 5th edition. Power to him. Do it.
Yep. And he, you know, little by little, he's whittled away at, you know, I played the game and he'll his little smoke thoughts. You know, I played the game and man, the magic system sucks for what I want to do. I'm going to eliminate this part and that part. What do you guys think? And then, you know, the next time he'd come around and he'd run some more games and go, it's not lethal enough. I'd love to see people, you know, get their eye ripped out and their fingers chopped off and, you know, body rashes or something, you know, and he, again,
every hit is immediately septic and you've got seconds to live and everything. We need to get him on here one time or another, and then I can get him in touch with a friend of mine. He he will appreciate, if for those Finnish people in the group, he will. I think Lloyd Collins would really appreciate Predor, because Predor is so vicious, so awful that the closest thing to a magic weapon you have is sticking your sword in a septic tank and then cutting someone with it, because it immediately debilitates you and immediately puts you in the ground. It's brilliant.
Oh wow. Yeah.
But in any case,
Lloyd's already expressed interest in coming on, so he will.
Okay, we'll see about that then. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. But to bring this back into attention, and to widen this out for those who who are interested in producing anything, including the high goals of having a successfully funded Kickstarter that, you know, is 500% over budget or something. My suggestion is you need someone to know who you are. You need to interact with people, and you need to make connections. And so I'll say for myself, and this is, oh wow, this is going to come across as bragging, but it's not.
Go for it, dude. Brag away.
I have For example, right now working on a project with Nerdarchy, Nerdarchy guys. Dave, the big old neckbeard, real great guy, has reached out to me quite a few times to say, "Hey, want to come on the show?" I work 6 days a week, and it's very difficult because he doesn't. His job now is to host Nerdarchy.
Yeah, his job is the internet thing now. Yeah.
Right. So, but he's reached out to me to say, "Hey, dude, if you want to come on the show, we've played games before. Absolutely, come on if you want to put anything out there." He reaches well over 65, 70,000 subscribers, and then he's connected to WebDM. They've got like 150, 200,000 subscribers.
So that reach is massive. It's gonna
that
get
reach
everybody.
is absolutely massive. Absolute Tabletop. Those four guys, each of them, I've played with Matt Click. I've played with Tim and James before. I've reached out with them. They've reached out to me. One of the books I produced, I actually reached out to Matt Click. He produced a book called The Convocation about the Griffin Riders, and in it he has a small, like a half page, maybe it might be a full page of rules about training griffins. And I said, "Hey, dude, can I use your rules are in parity to what I'm creating now. Do you mind if I use them?" And he is a publisher, right? So I'm basically asking, can I take your publishing material? The only thing he can do is say, give me a middle finger and say, "F you, dude, go away." He contacted me back. He's like, "Dude, you can go ahead and do it. Please don't run with it. Like, don't steal it." So then I came back to him and said, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to take it. I'm going to use it. I'm going to show you how I'm using it. And by the way, here's the free version. Here's the free book of how I used it. Send it back to him. He's like, "Dude, that's really cool." Okay. Since then, been going on. I think maybe at the time he might have had maybe, I don't know, a couple thousand subscribers. Now they're well over, like they're in the tens of thousands, probably. Whatever. Absolute Tabletop's Facebook groups, like in the 5,000s. Tabletop Terrors. And so by reaching out to these people, and when I say not just interacting with them, but becoming a presence, I can start naming names and you'll instantly know their presence without them, I hate to say this, without them being annoying.
Yeah.
You don't want to be annoying.
No, it's the kind of idea of you know about their existence. They are present in the zeitgeist, at least insofar as,
Right.
Like being able to recognize them on a professional level would be.
Correct. And so part of that is becoming an individual who is value added. You want to, when your presence shows up, especially in the production part of role playing, you want to be someone who is value added, whose presence adds value to any situation, right?
Yeah.
So when you make a comment on a video, when you produce a video, when you respond on Facebook, you put something out on Twitter, you're in your social media circles. I don't want to say put forth a fake face, but be the individual that likes to add to the conversation. Even if you disagree with the conversation, that you add to it, and don't be a negative nanny. Don't go, "Oh, I hate this game system," and then you're done, right? Say, I like, for example, let's say someone doesn't like Shadowrun. Don't respond with, "I can't stand Shadowrun," and then disappear. Go, there's another game called Nova Praxis or something. There's another game called Solemnium Void, I think that's what it's called. There are too
many to know. There are really just too many to know.
There's too many sci-fi games. And,
yes.
And come up with alternatives. Or, "Hey, I run Shadowrun. I use the background, but I run it in D20 Modern or something." Or, "Hey, I found this hack of Shadowrun that's really simple to use and only uses up to 4d6s, instead of the 3 pounds of d6 dice that I have to roll on my table, and but whatever the case may be, be the person that's value added, who likes and shares and subscribes, who pats people on the back when they're doing something good, who responds with, hey guy, I noticed you're doing this one thing, consider doing this other thing, and by the way, I know a friend, hook up with this other friend, be a connector. That's kind of how I got involved in it, with like not necessarily saying that I'm the guy to do it, but I know a guy who knows something about something, so why don't you two individuals talk and I'll stay in the background?
Yeah.
If you can be that person as well, others will join in. Lloyd, another thing, run games. If you can't do anything else, put a ton of live stream games online.
Mm-hmm.
Lloyd has done a ton of them. You know how
Yeah.
he plays the game unapologetically,
Yeah.
and you will go, wow, this guy runs a lot of games. I know what his gaming style is. Okay, I'm interested in that. So that's like my rundown of
how you can become a Kickstarter, how you can become a millionaire Kickstarter in 30 days. Just run 7 games at the same time for about 3 hours a day.
I can't say
there
that
you go, 21 hours in 3 hours. There you go. It'll be working fine. You'll be totally alive. You'll be fine. Now, yeah, I do. I totally, like, I'm negging, but I totally understand what you're saying in that form. And certain, to a certain degree, there's kind of my position on it, which is I like producing YouTube videos. I do like the concept of doing it. However, I am a very, very private person when it comes to my role-playing acumen. I mean, one of the big things of play games that people can see is people can see them, which will inevitably mean that they can see me come up with all the weird things that I throw at the wall, and honestly the really dark things. I've come to realize just how dark some of my material is by watching other people play a game, and it's like they're kind of going, oh no, the good guy died, this is so dark, and I'm kind of like sitting there going, dude, I can make a mountain out of the number of NPCs that I've had the players watch die, and it's not even that they died heroic, they just fucking keeled over, and like, so there is that push and pull to it. One day I'm thinking, yeah, let's be commercial, let's try and make this into my job, but on the other hand, it's inevitably going to mean that I have to probably change the way that I produce my things, how I comport myself, because like I don't feel comfortable showing my private to the public. So, it's certainly something that's got to grow and change. But like we keep coming back to, this is going to be called the Lloyd Collins episode, Lloyd Collins appreciation episode, because he is actually a sign, he is actually a symbol of not changing in the face of everything. And I mean, like, that can sometimes mean that you can come off be a bit of an arsehole, but the arsehole that we all like, it's nice. I've been playing with this piece of plastic for like an hour. But coming back to being sometimes a bit of an arsehole, let's talk about Games Workshop and their strange plan for the future. What a segue. And like this is kind of talk about more of the news things for the newcomers here. This is kind of the news side of it, but I feel like we've kind of run the course, and I'll just quickly go over things. So for everybody who probably doesn't know, Games Workshop is the big tabletop company of England. Everybody knows them in England, and even if they don't agree with them, you have some opinion on them. That's kind of their reach. And recently, they've decided to re-release their role-playing game systems. So, as another thing, for a very long time, they had kind of two aspects to it. They had the tabletop game, which everybody kind of like is involved with in one way or another. Even if, like, I mean, I don't like. I don't play the game, but I mean, I've got little minis lying around everywhere, painting all the stuff. They have various things. But one of the other sides that they really did have, which kind of cemented it into a lot of the British and some of the European gamers, is their role-playing games. And sadly, the role-playing games have slowly petered out over the years. Now they're just making a big comeback. They're making one for Warhammer 40,000. They're making one for their most recent fantasy version, Age of Sigmar. But interestingly, and by interestingly, I mean like today and yesterday, they basically said that the newest version of Warhammer Fantasy, which is their old version, is going to be coming back. And I mean, they did say that they were going to be bringing it back, like, in concept, but Games Workshop, generally speaking, kind of says, oh yeah, we're going to be bringing an update at some point. And that they've been doing that for the last years. If anybody's interested in finding something out, look up space dwarfs or squats, and you'll find the decades-long problems that those poor bastards have got to deal with. But anyway, so they're releasing this thing, and it is one of the big seminal dark fantasy role-playing games. If anybody's ever thought of wound systems, it comes from this game system. If people have been thinking about use of the D100, it comes also from this kind of system. It's had a lot of play in what people think of as kind of dark fantasy. The game setting brought the idea of orcs basically being football hooligans and ogres being obsessed with eating everything in sight. And it was a very, very powerful, very, very evocative world setting, and I'm very surprised by how it's coming back. Now, I know for a fact that you don't have that much experience with it, but do you know anything at all about the Warhammer world and kind of what it comes from? Because it's actually got an interesting history to it.
Yeah, and I was going to say the history of what is generally referred to here as 40K, and Warhammer in general. It is the history that is the thing that makes it so grand, right? It has it's one of the few games that has had a continual ongoing history in its setting since its inception. And there are people here, primarily miniatures, the miniatures part of it, that the two main things are you can have months and months of just people having conversations with people who go over the history of the 40K world.
Yeah, and they talk about this and that. And, yeah.
They know every in and out, and all the miniatures come with their own to represent portions of the history and the war that's been going on for so long. The other part is that you need to be financially secure if you really want to get into the miniatures part of the game, especially here. There are people who that is their thing, painting minis and buying minis and playing with them and then doing it all over again. Buying them, painting them, play. Buy, paint, and play. There are many people, actually including back to Lloyd Collins, that is a fan of the 40K universe and has used various games as a hack of the 40K universe. A great place to have an excuse to have mega weapons and fantasy creatures and starships and just blast each other.
The basis of Starfinder, Kind of like Starfinder went in a very different direction with its kind of pulp feel, but it's the concept of space elf, the concept of magic as psychic is the 40k concept. It is that idea.
Exactly. I think what I would find, I think is going to be their difficulty is that they have a base, a very avid base, and that base may be involved in the miniatures portion of it. By getting back to the role playing, how will they? I'm thinking they're going to have trouble getting new players into a system that has a long history.
Yeah,
and not um diluting the history for new players, and then yet at the same time not making them afraid to dive into a very detailed history. So they could very easily dilute it down and just go, this is the 40k universe, and have no history at all, which would drive away their base. Or they can say, hey, come back to our role-playing game. By the way, we've got 25 years of gaming history. Here's a 500-page book for you to read to to get caught up, How they balance that, I don't know. I suppose they could get into here's a quick start, here's our quick start rule set with barely any history, and start playing. And then, by the way, now that we've got you hooked on our drug, here's here's our,
here's our big expansive history. By the way, it's about £7,000. By the way, guys, have fun with that.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, that is to a certain degree what Games Workshop's development is nowadays. But something that I can say as like the thing that's going to be the big draw actually for specifically the Warhammer fantasy world is probably going to be that it's already ended. It is a closed loop system, so it's kind of like making a role-playing game of, I don't know, the first Star Wars film or something like that. It's going to be a closed loop, so to speak. They've also got an increased interest in the form of their video game side. They've managed to kind of weaponize their fantasy game systems into becoming their own, becoming a customer base in and of themselves. And I'm not going to say that there is this big overflow of people who are into like the Total War series being into role-playing games, but it's also that kind of concept that comes from that we were talking about with Kickstarter. It's making people make that leap from, viewer to contributor. It's making people go from that leap of, I played this game, now I'm going to play in another thing that is related to this game. There's a lot of people who are interested in lore. I mean, sadly, I disagree with. I have big problems with most of the people who actually do the Warhammer Fantasy lore videos because I find them repugnant people. But the concept of, I am now going to sit down and tell you the story of, I am now going to sit down and be the person who tells you the story of, is actually becoming a really big YouTube sensation right now. I'm trying, like, this is actually my big problem. I'm trying to think of somebody who I find personally palatable enough to recommend, and I can't, because most of them kind of sit there and kind of like just go, oh yeah, this is a horrible thing. We like, this is the best thing in the world. And I'm kind of like, no, that's not the point of the story, you strange man. But yeah. Oh, there you go. This is a good one for the 40k kind of side of things with its stuff. Go look up Remelays from 40k Theories and Alpha Busa. These two are two YouTube guys who really do try to make the story the important part of things. They don't try to make it into kind of like, oh, this is a vehicle for you to hear what I'm up to. You know, they're good stuff. Those guys are good. But really, I do agree with you absolutely. To a certain degree, I have the feeling that the fantasy role-playing system is going to make money, mainly because I know some grognards, I know some old guys who played in the fantasy world who hate Games Workshop because they ended the line. And as a result, they refuse to buy anything else, and they specifically buy fantasy things to spite the company. Like, it is very funny to watch. But I do think that I think that it's an interesting move, and it might be a sign of things to come. Maybe.
Well, Wizards of the Coast does need they need competition. Any
Oh
good
yeah, no.
company.
Anything that brings competition in is a good sign in my book, but
Right,
it's certainly going to make things a lot more. It's certainly a lot more like complicated with Games Workshop, especially considering their problems, the things that they've done in the past.
Yeah, and that's I think that's going to hold them back more than competing with fifth edition Dungeons and Dragons. Is how do they compete against themselves? I guess appease the diehards who are already into it, bring back the diehards who left, and then bring in new people who are unfamiliar or stayed away due to like cost or buy-in or the amount of mental energy it would take to get into it. By reducing those costs, yeah, they're going to have to. They're almost. They're like a juggernaut that has to handle a fresh egg or something. They can't. They've got to be real gentle and not crack it. But they're a pretty major player, and so they have to use their strength very gently in order to do it. So I would not want to be the individual to have to, kind of like fifth edition Dungeons and Dragons. I wouldn't want to be that individual to have to rejuvenate something that's been around a long time and then make those decisions. Unless of course they do a big giant play test, but even that brings its own problems.
They're not doing the playtest. They've already they're releasing the subject. They're releasing it in like June.
Are you serious?
It's weeks away. Yeah,
wow.
This is kind of the thing of like it came out because they announced, oh, we're doing 3 new systems. We're doing the 40K thing. I think it's Wrath and Glory. We're doing the Age of Sigmar one, which, by the way, has no information about it whatsoever. Literally, that it's coming out. And then about 3 days ago, or I know that they released the preview of what's going on. They released it today. They released it a couple of hours ago.
Wow.
And it's literally like nobody knows. Like, I'm looking at the Cubicle 7 website because that's where that's where the only bits of information is, because they're the ones who are making the game. That's it.
Wow.
It's really, really short notice.
Wow. Well, we'll definitely keep an eye on that, and definitely kind of how to bring this back into a big loop, kind of what we were talking about this entire time about like special occasions and things in the RPG community and the news in general, that we're in a world where we have immediate access to these kind of things, and it's kind of cool to have these companies, larger companies like game designers and Games Workshop and WotC, and then individuals like Lloyd who can communicate and get feedback directly with their customer base, their fans.
Yeah.
And so it's a new day, it's a new age, and part of something that you mentioned earlier, I didn't want to say anything, but at the time, but I think I will. Growing a thick skin is you absolutely have to grow a thick skin in this environment, whether you're a
Yeah.
company, whether you're an individual, whether you're a designer or a content creator.
Mm-hmm.
Um, oh my goodness. Like you really have to know who you are. Um, double down on those things that make you you, and then everything else that's extraneous, let it go.
Yeah, I
Let
dig
it
it.
go. Um, and understand that the context in which people communicate with you
Mm-hmm.
um, may not be. Assume every comment is made in like 3 or 4 different types of context.
Yeah, yeah.
Some people are like, I edit my context sometimes because I know I can be sarcastic
Mm-hmm.
and it can come off as rude. And what I'm being is I'm being contrarian because I'm being sarcastic with certain things, and I've had that taken the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes people are trying to be helpful, and because of the medium, they can't add in the pleases and thank yous and sorries, so they'll
Yeah.
just go like, the sound on your video is terrible, right? And
Yeah.
they don't mean, they're not
That
being
you're a bad
rude.
person because of it.
Right. There's what they're saying is, man, I really like your video, but the sound really quality isn't very good. Is there a way for you to
Mm-hmm.
fix it? But they're on the road. They're just going, hey, dude, can you fix the sound? Boom. And they send off a message. You really got to toughen up the skin if you're someone
Yeah.
out there who's like really into this kind of, or wants to be involved in this kind of thing. And
Mm-hmm.
the larger you are, the more noise you'll hear. And so, like, for example, like right now, it would be very difficult. Um, I if I want to, I can send a private message off to like Tim or James or like Matt Click or something, or Dave in Nerdarchy. And for the most part, they'll probably respond.
Mm-hmm.
I don't do it because I know their attention is so many other places, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the reason for not abusing that is because I understand how important what they do and how they do it in their time, how important their time is. So as these guys get larger and larger, it'll be harder and harder um, for you as an individual to be heard over the noise of
Everybody
10,000
else.
subscribers. It's just not
Mm-hmm.
possible. And I
Yeah.
think sometimes, especially those like, for example, like um hell, Prue Prue and Notorious Ghostmouth, and who are some of these other, oh man, Jeremy Lilly and Jonathan Miles and um I'm gonna have to stop because there's I can't remember all the people who are in the community who respond to so many different things, to my videos, to other people's
Mm-hmm.
videos, um, in the social media context, and Facebook and Twitter and those kind of places. Um, sometimes you'll lose track of those individuals, and
Yeah.
and it's not because you want to lose track, but it's because you're hearing more and more, you're getting more and more responses, you're hearing more and more people, you're getting more and more subscribers. And while that's good, the bad thing is that you can't respond to everybody like you want to.
Yeah.
And some people might consider you to be like, oh man, this guy's an asshole because he's not, I sent him a message 3 times and he won't respond. And the person's going, dude, I want to respond to you right now, but I can't do that because I've got to type off this email to one person. I've got to send this thing. I've got to get to
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
meeting. I've got a day job. I've got my family, so
Like so the moral of the story is life is difficult and you've got to wait and be patient in a world where waiting and being patient is absolutely the worst thing you could do.
yeah,
But,
exactly. It's
that's just the way of life. That's just the way of it.
yeah.
But I believe uh oh, actually, I forgot to ask this question.
Sure.
Are there any, with the exception of course, the great inimitable Lloyd Collins, have you got any Kickstarters that you're interested in that that are on right now in Kickstarter or anything? You got
Oh
anything like
wow.
that?
Wow. Okay. I mentioned before I'm into Matt Koval's
Hmm.
thing. He's huge. One I'm looking forward to. I'm not sure when it'll come out, if ever, but I was very interested. There's a Kickstarter for called Salt in Wounds, and it is about a setting in which a Tarrasque, um,
Oh, bugger! I remember this.
yes,
Yeah.
Salt in Wounds, and it's a city. It is a city built around the still living, still regenerating corpse of a Tarrasque held
Hmm.
down through ritual because the community could not kill it.
Yeah.
And the blood has mutated the earth, and people are selling its meat and bones, and the different supposedly like there are different neighborhoods. So there's like a neighborhood around the tail section. There's a neighborhood around the brain. It's this big thing. J.M. Perkins is
Yeah.
writing it. Um, Bit off quite a bit, so I'm not sure when and or if it'll come out. But I like the concept of it. So because I'm that guy
Just
that
on the
like
standard, just on the
yeah
standard of like you want to be unique. This is how you do unique.
yeah
You know? Yeah.
that
No,
selling
that.
point is great. Now I've received I haven't been burned on a Kickstarter yet.
Hmm.
I've gotten a ton of dice through Kickstarters. Um, the company that's done the people who have done Tiny Dungeons. Um, One is called Mechas and Monsters. Another one is, I believe, it's called Tiny Dungeon. It's a D6 system.
Yep.
The basic rules: you roll 2d6. You're at disadvantage, you roll 1d6. You have an advantage, you roll 3d6, and then every rule just spawns off of that. Um, Very simple 3x5 card kind of game. I
Hmm.
love those. The absolute tabletop guys. I have a Oath of the Frozen King that's come out. I really love that. Where's do I have one that's nearby? Uh, I've got the character sheets. Um, it's a game called Dream Chaser. Uh,
Okay.
I love the that was a Kickstarter that I backed. I really like that system. I would love to run it. Dream Chaser is a it is not a game about playing in a dream, but the game is designed so that it doesn't have a setting.
Yeah.
You basically have like a dream map where you ask your players what you want to be involved in. It goes through a set of questions. You All the people involved answer the questions.
Hmm.
You shuffle the answers, and that's your game.
Okay.
And so, a very simple system, 2d10 system. Um, there's no difficulty section. You're basically like, let's say one of your stats is 5 and your other stat is 7. You roll 2d10, and you one die you try to beat a 5, the other one you try to beat a 7. That's
Mm.
the whole system. But a very interesting game there. So currently I have the two Kickstarters. Of course, Lloyd's. I've backed Iskloft.
Hmm.
Not and here's the weird thing, like, and here's my reason for backing it. Um, I I don't know very much about like Viking heritage and culture and such. And I know that you can go down a rabbit hole with too much information. So I don't know if it's going to be that kind of game. Um, but I'm a fan of the show Vikings, and
Hmm.
I'm a fan of Lloyd. And uh, selfishly, um, I, as a fan of Lloyd's, and I would consider myself to be a across the pond fan. I want to remain in his circle because
Hmm.
his circle is growing very huge.
Hmm.
So all those put together, uh, dude, I'll support what you're doing because I want you to support what I'm going to do.
No, that's fair enough.
So
Yeah.
all those combined, and I want to see it. The artwork looks like it's going to be great. The people he's working with is great.
Hmm.
Um, I also want to see what performance check. What's his name? Rob.
Rob Coletta. Yeah.
Yep, Rob Coletta, what he may do. So in a way, like my support of the Kickstarter is kind of like it's like the mathematical formula of getting to these different individuals and see what they do. Because if Rob sees how Lloyd is successful, he may want to do something that I may want to back, and then those individuals are creators. I want to back creators that I think are doing a lot of things for the community, and then I would like them to back me at some point. So,
I totally agree with that concept. To a certain degree, there's I mean, one of the squares one of the circles that's got to be really squared with it is that all of us, by dint of being game masters or playing in role-playing games or something, are in some way, shape, or form creative. And if there is only a finite amount of money passed around, the creative dollar will get passed around, and eventually we won't get enough money around. So the idea of supporting someone in Kickstarter is kind of the big thing that I like about it so much. Right. And I mean, to a certain degree, I was looking through my Kickstarter thing because I was kind of thinking about, what have I backed? What have I thought to back? And I noticed that a lot of them are literally kind of like, yeah, we're really small companies. We don't do that much. And, just straight up $10, you get a book.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep. Now I'm a fan of hard copies. I don't support very many PDFs. It's not because I don't want to. But if I notice that they're getting a lot of attention, I might shoot off a message or something like that to just say, hey, consider doing doing a physical copy. If it's $10 for the PDF and $30 for the physical, $40 for the physical, I'll buy the physical. And also, money is a great motivator. If you think the individual is or will create something quality, money will make that person consider doing something even better quality.
Yeah.
And I find that, like, for having subscribers and producing books, that I always want to thank the people who thanked me by giving them more back. Right. It's almost like a psychological contest. Like, oh no, you're not going to thank me more. I'm going to make sure you get something better because I don't want to be the person. It's like opening a door for someone to have them to go through the door, and they say, no, you first. You go, no, you first. No, you first. No, you go first. And so sorry. So
no,
as a content creator, it's like, oh man, oh wow, these people really like this part. I better do something better next time. Because they really, no one has to go out of their way to do anything like that, to respond to videos, to post in Facebook, to make
a lot of it
comments
is
and
elective, and the voluntary use of it it's a good sign. It's a very good thing.
Yeah. And the way people should also be aware of how programming works in a ephemeral sense. YouTube videos, Facebook, all these things, they use algorithms to give you or delete from your vision what it is you're into or not into. So when you interact with people online or choose not to interact, or you're giving them something they want to interact with, or you're not giving them something they want to interact with, those people may get lost in the noise.
Yeah.
Right. So if I make videos and someone is not interested in them and they don't interact with them, eventually they won't see they won't see that feed any longer. Not necessarily by their choice. They may just go, you know what, those last 5 videos I'm not very interested in. And then eventually their algorithm will delete my presence from their attention. And so unless they specifically make a hard choice like a click or a like or a thumb to return back, they won't come back.
Yeah.
Because there'll be a fence of noise in between. So I'll say that if there are any people out there you haven't heard from lately, whether it's in any of your social media context, go back through your YouTube subscriptions, go back, type in their name specifically and look for them to reconnect with those individuals to see if they're still out there. For example, the Gentleman Gamer stopped making videos for a while, and then I think I got a notification or something came up a while, and I realized he came back. But since he hadn't made videos in a long time, my feed didn't bring him back into my feed again until he started. And then I had to go back into his videos and go, wow, how did I miss those? I subscribed to the guy. Why would I miss something even if he hadn't made a video in 6 months? Well, the reason is because the algorithms won't notify you.
Yeah.
And
Silicon Valley believes that algorithms will save the world. It turns out all it does is makes you forget that some of your best mates are making videos. Yeah,
exactly. So, Outsider 68 is another guy who stopped making videos, and then every once in a while he threw something up, and I was like, how the hell did I miss that? And so, in interacting with people helps keep them in your attention. Same thing with like Facebook and Twitter and Google Plus and those kind of things. If you interact with them, they'll remain in your circle, they'll remain in your vision, and then you can then go, oh, okay, I know what they're doing. Even if you don't like what they're doing now, it helps keep them around so that other people can interact with them as well. Even if you're not directly tied to them. So that's another thing too. It's just
now that's that. But in any case, I think having struck the hour of, I believe it's been about
an hour.
How long has it been? It's been about an hour and 45 minutes. I think it's good for it. So being the grand spokesman of the US, the larger RPG community, and in fact, I'm looking at my screensaver right now. Crows, how do you feel, and how will people be able to get in touch with you and stuff like that? And what are your plans?
Let's see. Right now, I will disclose that I get my best writing done on a shitter. When I sit down and I have to pinch a loaf, that's where I get most of my writing done. And so therefore I do, even if it's 5 minutes, I pick up my phone, I've got my Google Doc, and I do as much writing as I can. So right now, fingers crossed, can't disclose too much, but I hope this writing project for Nerdarchy goes through. I'm not doing a lot of the writing. Rob and Rob's doing most of the writing. Alex is doing like a lot of the layout, and so hopefully that'll go through for a critical hit. I am constantly working on the next book. Alex is doing the layout for Vast Plains. That's the current name right now.
All right.
Adventuring on the plains is a weird concept for the cinematic environs that I'm doing. Most of the cinematic environs are natural environments like mountains and Arctic, and, aquatic. And so plains are kind of like it's like flyover country. The middle of the United States, they call it flyover country because all the major cities are on the outskirts, and then you have this big main section that's flat and gets hit with tornadoes and is loosely populated with like cornfields and stuff and wheat fields. So how do you make that interesting? And I just went down the rabbit hole and just like all kinds of elements into it. So hopefully people will be able to use that. I'm thinking it's going to be like a 40 to 50 page book on on nothing but flat expanses. A deep dive into mounted combat and pets and familiars.
Oh, okay.
I really and hopefully this will. The strange thing is I hope this coincides with WotC released the Unearthed Arcana for the Centaur and the Minotaur as a playable race.
That was one of the news things that I just put aside because I felt that nobody was talking about Warhammer. Everyone's talking about how the Centaur is the single worst creature in all the world since the Alcocra. And the Alcocra is the single worst thing.
I know.
Since gnomes.
I get it. I know. Oh, it's got flight. It's overpowered. And whatever. I'm here to tell you that my desire to make the cinematic environs was literally like, you're missing out of the 3 pillars. That pillar is underutilized, and by underutilizing it, you're doing everything in a vacuum. You can't if you play if one player flies and no one else can fly in a vacuum, that is, you're going, well, that person has an advantage as well above everybody else. If you're playing in a place where if there's only one race that flies and you're the only person that can, then, well, yeah, sure. But if you're including that race in your game, then why wouldn't there be other flyers?
Yeah.
Just like there are other
any number of things.
You know, and so now people are going like, oh, it's the Centaur. They have a fast moving speed and they can carry all this extra stuff. And then conversely, Centaurs can't go into dungeons. How can you play one? So Vast Plains, that's going to solve all that. Including a section on how to design open air dungeons. How do you design a dungeon on a plane?
Okay, that's going to be very useful for me because my players are getting fed up with all the, oh yeah, you stumble across a hole in the ground and congratulations, you're in an ancient land. Yeah.
Right. And how do people or cultures on planes deal with flying creatures? How does that work? And so there's a section on like camouflage and using lore tactics and exhaustion and long range versus short range perception. Because if you can see for 5 miles, how do you sneak up on someone? And how do people interact with each other if they know they're going to? If you can see your enemy from 5 miles away, and that gives them plenty of time to prepare, does it make sense for you to attack them? And so there's going to be a section on that as well. Definitely mounted combat. How to use mounted combat. Mounted combat does complicate things because you've got 5 players. Those 5 players are on 5 horses. Does that mean that they have 10 individuals in the combat? Well, maybe. Okay, so then as the game master, how do you handle mounted combat? Well, now your goblins are mounted on, devil dogs or some kind of crap like that. How do you handle that? So yeah, handling mounted combat, and of course, everything involved with planes, whether it's like hot weather, cold weather, tornadoes, hurricanes, torrential rains, flash floods, fires, heat lightning, those kind of things. So yeah, all that.
I can dig it. I can dig it. Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I'm working on now. And since that's being laid out, I'm also working on cityscapes. That's going to be a huge book. How to adventure in a city, details on cities, randomly rolling cities, where they're at, what the cultures in them, random details, cities with canals and aqueducts and sewer systems and all those kind of things. So yeah, always writing. Just open up a file, start writing. Tim Carney from Tabletop Terrors and Absolute Tabletop is always pushing people to be creative, to keep producing. And so He fuels me a little bit when I'm like, I don't know what to think about. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I use that as fuel.
No, badass. So I believe that is, in fact, the end of our time here, the end of our 2 hours set aside. So for those of you who watch this later on or now, this should be... now I'm going to start throwing out things, and Davae is going to shout at me if I got any of it wrong, okay? This is going to be a fortnightly gig. So the next time it's coming out is Sunday after next. And it's generally going to be between 11 and 12 for a startup time, and then it's going to go for about an hour and a half, 2 hours, that kind of thing. We love questions and stuff like that because basically I really like answering questions. I like sounding more intelligent than I am. So by all means, send questions. I've got a Twitter. I got a Curious Cat. If you look up Darius Jonna, Layth, Al-najjar, any of it, you can find it. And also, if you post up on any comments, we'll be sure to answer them during the thing if we feel that this is more interesting. But thanks very much for having me, Davae.
And for me, please, if someone sees DBJ, Davae, Breon, Jaxon out there, respond. Get some questions out there. Heck, criticisms, anything. I love talking about that stuff. I love the RPG community. I love adding to it if I can. I don't get to play as much as I can, so this is like I live vicariously through other people's interactions, and so when other people are having fun and creating things, I want this creators conclave to be ours, but I don't want it to be mine. I would love us to have other people on with us, to push other people's channels. I want people to see what other people are doing. Their success means that the community grows, which means it's my success because I get to see a larger community, and then I get to interact with those people because then they know me. So both adding to the community, both selfishly because I like seeing people who are trying to do something be successful, and for my own, I guess you can call it success or whatever, my own thing. I love a high tide floats all ships. So guys, do your thing, respond. If you are a content creator, dude, shout out to me. Contact me on Facebook. You can email me directly. I don't mind being emailed directly. I am at dbjkarate@gmail.com. I'll probably put that in the links. I don't know why I don't put my email out there. I read that stuff. I don't care. Please respond to me, even if you're just like, hey, dude, I was thinking about this thing. Could you talk about this one subject? Send me a link about something. Hey, I saw this article, or I've got some questions. In the States, this will be around 6 a.m. So for you, those state bound, on 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, that would be 3 a.m. on the West Coast. So most of you will be asleep, which is fine.
Well, people are awake everywhere. I'm sure the people of Germany appreciate our accurate timing, or maybe even the people of Hawaii. I don't know when the fuck does Hawaii? What the hell time? Who would know? Anyway,
dude, I have always wanted to get into a hangout with Runeslinger, and Runeslinger is in Thailand.
Oh, and wow, he's gonna have a hell of a time making that kind of work.
I think he is 11 to 12 hours earlier than myself.
Okay, so you could theoretically be speaking to someone in the previous day.
Yes.
Good for
that
you.
That is bizarre, dude. That's really bizarre. So yeah, those time things are strange. Just keeping up with them. But yeah, anyone out there who would like us to answer any questions, absolutely. I would love for creators conclave to grow and become
Mm.
like a brand of sorts. Like, hey, we're part of this thing, and maybe we can grow other people's channels and kind of grow like a web of content creators. So that's
yeah,
it.
let's get to that. I must run away now because
Absolutely.
actually a thing. But in all cases, I shall see you all about. Bye bye.
All right. See ya. And